Hey everyone, it's Manda here, and I'm delighted to have Jordan from Bar Karate on the interview today. So, Jordan's just told me he's been around the planet about 14 times in the last year. He's done all sorts of things, really accomplished sailor, lots of high performance dinghy racing, coaching, which is something that I absolutely love. Plus, has recently started a really successful podcast interviewing some absolute sailing legends, many of you will know, called Bar Karate. And yeah, so Jordan, you can introduce yourself. Tell us, who are you?
Who am I? I'm just an average guy that likes to have a good time, is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fairly lucky human being. For me, I've had a lot of success in sailing, and that's come because I've been able to sail with some really good sailors. They've let me go on the boats with them. Normally I prefer the dinghy stuff, to be honest, the high performance dinghy stuff, until my body sort of shut down a little bit. I did it religiously, and I was fortunate to sail with some of the best sailors, certainly in Australia. So I got to get a lot of championships through their skill and my just hanging on for the ride. Let's say that. Although, it was good fun. That was something really good fun, sort of the high performance sailing stuff. So 505s, the FDs, did everything. If you name a boat, the Sharpie class in Australia is quite big and great fun. And then sort of as an aside, through my whole life, I've always liked to be, I'm always the class clown sort of thing, the funny guy. And so I got dragged by accident into sports commentating, just because some friends of mine played professional basketball, used to go and watch their basketball games and make a few jokes in the stands. And one day the club said to me, "Oh, do you want to be the court announcer?" And I just went, "Oh man, court announcing's so boring. Why don't I just try being a little different?" And I went completely loose. And it just went so well that the club that I was announcing for had 3 times the crowd of anyone else, and the place used to rock. And I'd always try and push the boundaries, and every game it was my goal to get threatened by the referees to be booted out of the stadium. So I was never mean. Like, you can never do anything mean. It's got to be fun.
Yep.
You never genuinely want to hurt someone. But there was always some sort of play. And the opposition guys used to love it too. They used to love coming down. And so from that, I sort of evolved into doing a whole range of sports. Like, it was incredible. I was a cycling expert for the Tour Down Under for a radio station, which is, one of the pro cycling events. I did the World Championships for BMX. I did open water swimming. Commentating open water swimming, a 10K open water swim from land, is the hardest gig in the world, except for speed skating, where I never realised how difficult speed skating was, because if they go on a 5K loop, they all draft each other. So what happens is you get 30 people go past in about 1 second, and then you see no one for the next 5 minutes. And trying to do commentary for that was hard. And so sort of all that sort of stuff just built and built. And then one day the Volvo came calling, the Ocean Race. They needed someone to provide commentary and host all the VIP events. And Nick Bice, who I do Bar Karate with, knew of me, and he'd seen my work, and he just said, "You just got to get Jordan. He's the guy." And so my sailing has sort of slowed down, and this opportunity came up, and my wife is very understanding, so off I went trudging around the world, and it hasn't stopped yet. So it's a dream. It's an absolute dream, just having fun. And Bar Karate, like, it's actually the same philosophy I threw into the court announcing. We looked at sailing and just said, it's just delivered so dryly.
Yeah.
And everyone I know in sailing is a ton of fun. We all go and have a great time together. Everyone's good mates, or the women are fantastic, the blokes are fantastic, and you've got these amazing kids out there sailing their little dinghies. Like, with your coaching point, one of my favourite things to do when I'm coaching is you get all the kids, if you're doing a bunch of kids, you get all the kids in the room and say, how cool are your parents? It's so much harder to sail a boat than it is to drive a car, so much more dangerous. And they trust you that much that they're getting you to do it at this young age, and these kids it's just a great thing. The parents love that one, but the kids love it as well. And so, it's just fun. It's just so much fun.
I totally agree, because I used to be a sailing coach as well, and it was probably one of my most favourite jobs. And the reason I was so passionate about, teaching kids, and I think those of us that are lucky enough to grow up sailing as young kids travel so well internationally, is that you get so much freedom as a sailor. We used to have a beach house, and it was nothing flash, but we could get on our boats, and we weren't allowed to drive cars. I might have tried once or twice, sorry mum, but we could always get in the boat and sail to the shop and buy a Mars bar, or we could go off with, a picnic box I'm from Hobart, so, to, up the coast, or even over to Maria Island with a few friends. And we could really go a lot further than we could on our BMX bikes. And, our parents trusted us to be out on our boats all day. So you get a lot of independence at a young age, and you learn to use such a great skill. So I love that story. I think it's really cool that you empowered them with that, because it's something that they'll keep with them for such a long time.
I think a lot of our community feel the same way. I think we've had a lot of talk about bringing fun into sailing and bringing more people into the sport. And we did an episode with Adrian Finglas, who most people in Australia would know at least. Many around the world would know as one of the great coaches in Australia. And, he talked about the fun. We had Santi the week after. He said the same thing. And people have been saying the same thing. But that episode with AIDS just skyrocketed in terms of listening, like the numbers of people. It's our number one most popular episode. Mm-hmm. And it took 2 weeks for that to happen. And it's a slow burn, but that people are responding to that. So people want to see, more people out sailing, and, particularly from the kids, just giving that kids that power, and that, because it teaches all the life skills. Any sailing kid, if you're hiring people and they've got sailing on their resume, you should just hire those, because they know how to do everything. They can do it with their hands, they can do it with their brains. So it's a great thing for children and people to do.
I absolutely agree. I just feel that before we go on too much, that we have a lot of people listening from all around the world, not necessarily sailors. And as you know, in the super yacht industry, there's a lot of people on motorboats. And so I think there's a lot of people that are actually wondering, how does bar karate even work with sailing? Like, why is a guy that runs a podcast called Bar Karate on a yachting show? Because not everyone will understand what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Where the name came from.
Yeah,
Bar Karate.
Exactly.
So it's very, very simple. You go to a sailing race or a regatta, and after the race, you'll go to the bar and have a drink and talk about your racing and have a bit of banter. And you will, every time, 100% of the time, you'll see in the bar people with their hands describing the tacks and the lee bows and, everything that goes on. So any interaction, when they have a close interaction, they'll describe it with their hands, and they can't help themselves. They always use their hands. And I've always called it, the bar karate, because you sit in there in the bar and you just say, oh, look, the bar karate's big over there, and so it's sort of just a little subtle joke. And so that's where the name just came from, just knowing that. The thing that has worked out really well for our little podcast is that combination of words, bar and karate, have never been used before on Google. So within day one, we're the first, you search bar karate, we're right at the top. And it didn't take very long at all to get to the top. So that was a real marketing lesson for us. We had no clue what we're doing. It was just, we wanted to reserve the name. We wanted to reserve our brand and create a brand. So Bar Karate. We've got a few others up our pockets as well. We do have a good laugh together.
Oh, come on, tell us. What were the other options?
I haven't registered them yet. I haven't registered them yet, but I'll tell you, I'll register them first. But because I told Bicey the other day, and he's just going, oh, you know, Bicey, when he's happy with something, he goes, oh, that's a ball tightener. And he actually said, geez, that's the second best thing you've ever come up with, he reckons. So we've got a couple of other brands, whether we use them or not. But if somebody wants a really good brand, they could write to me and I'll sell it to them.
There you go.
There
Absolutely.
you go.
We'll put your link below. So if you sounds like you do come up with some good names. So can you tell us a bit more? So who's involved in bar karate? And because you've talked about Bicey, once again, some people mightn't know who he is and why he's so wonderful. So can you just explain who's involved and what are some of the characters you've come across?
So there's three of us that host the show, and we all came up with the concept together. So Nick Bice is one, Bicey. Most people around the professional world know Bicey. So he was the chief technical officer of the Volvo Ocean Race. He's just a dumb kid from Port Lincoln in South Australia, but he's not dumb at all. He's just a boat builder by trade, and he's got an incredible work ethic, and he's very intelligent, and he's just very quick and humorous, and he genuinely cares about everybody. Like he's just a really nice bloke, and it's good fun to hang out with him because there's no downside. He's always working for someone to help someone out. He's just one of those people. It's like his folks. His folks are the same. I'm good friends with his sister as well. It's a really good family. And then the other guy's BP, which is Brett Perry. And Brett's been based in Spain for a long time, trying to make it as a pro sailor. Brett's got the most energy of a human being you've ever seen, like he's always just going for it. Always just going for it. Every day I wake up to a message, or we're going to do this, or we're doing that now. And
I did 14-hour drive with him once from Duardene down to his house in Valencia. It was the longest 14 hours of my life. We drank a few Red Bulls for the drive. So yeah, he kept the vibe going the whole way. It could have been like the biggest podcast ever.
Yeah. He just wants to go and go and go, and he's just looking for, he just wants to be happy, and he's got his family and his kids, which is obviously his priority, but he loves his sailing, and he's trying to.
And he's done a couple of Volvos, hasn't he? He's done at least one.
Yeah. And I think he did a bit in the America's Cup. He's done plenty. Mm. Like he's spent his whole time as a pro, and now he's based in Sydney. And he sort of does a lot of rigging work, and he's always working for the next thing, and he's incredibly passionate about the double-handed or the offshore racing. So we bring that up a little bit with that new Olympic event. We've brought that up a little bit, and I think that's driven a lot by Brett's passion for that, and to the extent that he's gone out and he's working on a design for a new boat, which maybe it'll be the new Olympic boat. So I've seen the drawing. I've seen the first render at least. So yeah, he's just like, it was crazy. We're talking about it, and then 3 days later there's a render on my email just talking about this. So that's Brett. He's just, it's a ball of energy all the time. So it's so
it's a good skill set you've got between the three of you too, in terms of yachting, because it's quite broad. And you're obviously, between the three of you, very well connected.
Yeah, that's the main thing, because that allows us to get really good guests. Yeah. The rule with bar karate we have is that it's got to be interesting, it's got to be informative, or it's got to be funny. Yeah. Okay.
So I'd love to ask, who are as you go along, who's the most interesting, who's the funniest? And as you talk through each of those sections and those rules, I'd love, and I'm sure we'd all love to know, who are the limelights you've had in each of those departments.
Oh, okay. So in terms of who we can access, we sort of, it's the way that the podcast has evolved now has allowed us, we could always open the doors up to any in the top pro sailing scene, because we knew them, they're mates. So we could just pick up the phone and talk to like Guillaume Verdier, who's one of the great designers, or 1K. We've had lunch with 1K a few times, and we've had him in meetings, so we could just get 1K, or we can go straight to the top of North Sails, or we can go to the top of Southern Spars, or we can go to the top of Doyle's, or we can go, to any boat builder. So we sort of have between the three of us, we've done something. So that allowed that. But now we're starting to get a reputation which is allowing us to open up slightly more obscure doors. So, like our target at the moment, and we think we might get there, is a guy like John Florence would be really interesting to us, because he's the best surfer in the world, but he's more passionate about sailing than he is about surfing. And
really?
I'm not sure many.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think many people realise that. He's got a gunboat.
Cool.
Did you know that he's got a gunboat 60, the performance cat?
Right.
So he actually his goal is to actually sail to each of the events. So he's he's mad for the sport. I'm
sure there's a big lineup to crew for him.
Yeah. Can you imagine? So yeah, we sort of have things like that. The ones, I think, what is the biggest lesson for me has been, I'm always so certain I know what people want to hear.
Yep.
And so when we're doing these things, I'm really certain I'm pretty confident I know how each interview is going to go and what people are going to listen to. But then you actually go and do an interview, which you think, oh yeah, no, not that many people. People won't respond to it. It won't resonate. But it absolutely does the exact opposite.
Yep.
And the classic example was the one with Adrian Finglas, which, AIDS has been a mate of mine for 30 plus years. And we wanted to talk, one of the goals of Barcarati is to get more people in the sport. And AIDS is as passionate about that as anyone I know. And he just sacrifices so much of his time to make that happen. So, and we got him on, and we didn't think he was a big name globally. Like, I knew everyone in Australia knew him, but I know that a lot of people in the US do. But that episode just went nuts. So whether it's the topic or not, I don't know, but that episode has gone completely nuts, and we absolutely love it. So in terms of others, I'm just trying to think who are the funniest ones. So one that we had a lot of difficulty with, because we're all spread around the world, was one with Phil McGain, who's a pro windsurfer. So we had a lot of dropouts and so forth. And that one, people have really responded to, got a huge response to that. The other ones are like Hannah Diamond, a lot of the female conversations have been a ton of fun.
Hannah's awesome. We love you, Hannah.
Hannah and Abby, two of my favourite people. So it was really fun to do those sorts of interviews with them. And then, they're all good. They all just turn out so much fun. We have got a commitment from Robbie Nash, which I think nearly everybody on the planet would be desperate to hear us talk to Robbie. It was supposed to happen this week, but I couldn't get onto him. So it was like, I've sort of met Robbie a few times, but it's still sort of a bit weird when, you're emailing Robbie Nash and he's going, oh, hi, Jordan, blah, 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 blah. And you're thinking, yeah, I'm not worthy. I'm not really worthy.
He is, though. He's so friendly and welcoming, isn't he? If you can get him off the water.
Yeah. So yeah, the conversations for us, we run pretty busy lives, but when we get to, generally we try and record on a Sunday so we can do a bit of an update on some regattas and stuff. We try and do it then, but it's completely dependent on the guest and whether we have a guest or not. But so generally we do it on a Sunday, and at the end of the week, just before we start our next week, it's kind of like this big. It's very refreshing for us. We do it for fun. We're certainly not doing it for the money. And yeah, so it really makes everything worthwhile. It's a ton of fun, absolute ton of fun.
That's awesome. So
Mm,
cool. And
mm.
what really lights me up is just seeing people, and that's why, you know, I love VP and hanging out with him. He sponsored my brother in the mini transit, and
Oh
you
yeah,
know, gave him a boat a few years ago to do that. And so we spent a lot of time laughing our way through that whole, you know, that whole campaign. And what I love about sailing is the people, the characters that come in, and people are just so high vibe and positive, and really about something bigger than just themselves. You know, everyone's, you can meet someone in a bar and know them for 5 minutes, and you'll see them again, and it's, you might get, you feel like you know them more than, say, your cousin that you grew up with.
yeah.
You know, it's a very, very strong community in yachting, and people seem to be very positive and accommodating. You know, I think we're really lucky in terms of that. Get some
Yeah,
good people.
yeah. Well, you hear those stories all the time, like, you know, the landing of the boat, or you fly into a country, and the next thing you know, you've got a house to stay in. I did my first world champs as a young fellow. I did with a guy called Sandy Higgins, who's you know, was actually best man at my wedding. I didn't bother
Yeah.
getting married till I was 50. I waited. I mean, I've been with my partner for a long time, so so Sandy and I had a full life of friendship together. So we'd been best mates for 30 odd years, and he was still my best man, you know, later on in life. And we actually travelled first worlds. It was in Canada, I think. Was it? Yeah, Canada. And we went travelling through the US afterwards for 3 months. We didn't ever actually end up having to pay for one night's accommodation, you know, just,
That's
it was just,
amazing.
people just pass you on, you know, it's a
Yeah.
great community. So,
And what do you think the best trip you've ever done, sailing trip you've ever done, be it on the water or to a regatta or to a World Series, or following the Volvo? What's been what would be the highlight of your life in terms of sailing?
oh, they're all sort of, I find that really hard to answer. I will say
Top three.
The Volvo was exceptional in the way it's presented. You know, and for me, I got to do all the cool stuff. I had the VIP. I sort of hosted all the VIPs, so I got to see all the very best of everything. And then we had the Sailors Terrace at the Volvo. So basically, I had every stopover at the Volvo. The catering was by Jamie Oliver Company, so the food was exceptional, and all the catering staff became friends. And then we had the Sailors Terrace, where all the, you know, all the VIPs could get food and drink and stuff. And so I could always, probably shouldn't say this, but could always sneak a drink. I was always hosting someone and needed to drink for work. That's what I'll say.
Yep.
But we always were, you know, we're traveling around to cool locations, and everyone loved it. Like anyone that comes to the event, I think that's what the thing that made it so good for me. We saw all these people who are all used to being sort of wined and dined at all these corporate events, and they were just all blown away by how good sailing was. They'd talk to me about different things. They'd say, you know, like I go to Formula One, or I go to the golf, I go this, and I get put in a room, I get the food and drink, and I get to watch, and I probably watch it on TV, and I'm there all day, and it's, you know, it's okay. But the ocean race, you come in, you know, you get in your wet weather gear, you go out sailing on the boat. And that's why people sponsor Volvo boats, because they can entertain, because they own the boat or they're paying for the boat. They can take their corporate clients out, and we organise sailing days for all the corporate clients, and they get to we make up these races. They get made to feel like superstars, and they go and sail with the actual sailors, and they just come off, and, you know, they get good food, they get good drinks, and then they get, you know, go to talks, and it's just amazing. And the deals that get done, and I'm there for them, because I'm hosting this, you know, like I remember one of my regular, the sponsors was talking to me about it beforehand, talking about how they've got a client that they want to try and lock away. The deal was, I don't know, 500 or 600 million. It was a big deal. Like, and they were desperately trying to close it. And so they'd worded me up. So I just made them sound like the greatest potential sponsor, the greatest people. And they, I walked over and towards the end of the day, and I asked their guests how it was going. They were just having the best time and rah, rah. And I said, and then as I was walking off, I said, wouldn't you want to be in business with a company that treats you like this? And they said, absolutely, and so gave them the closing question, gave them the opportunity to close the deal, the whole thing. And it was just, it's a great event, and it's done all the way around the world. So it's a really successful marketing event. The Volvo Ocean Race, the way that's been run, it's just been fantastic.
And it does change so many lives. I speak to people all the time that say, I saw this race called the Volvo on TV, and I thought that looks cool. So then I went and did a sailing course down on the Hamble or in a flotilla in Greece. And then I decided to throw in my corporate job and just find a way to get involved in the race, or find a way onto super yachts, or find a way into dinghies, And so, the vision you guys have, what I really love about the Volvo Ocean Race is, a lot of people don't understand what I do when I'm teaching medicine or coaching in leadership. And then I say, well, we work with the guys, like you might have heard of this little race called the Volvo Ocean Race. Oh my God. Yeah, we know all about that, and the America's Cup. So they're really helping putting sailing on the map, because one thing I definitely noticed when I was living back in Australia for a few years is there was a big need to get young people in the clubs. You go into your local club and there's a lot of older people with, grey, we used to call it the sea of grey hair, and lots of kids. And then the bit that was missing was the 20 to 50-year-olds, then as we all start having kids, we start going back to our original clubs and putting our kids go through that. But, to get the youth and the young people and adults involved in sailing again, where there's that gap, I find really important, and the clubs need it and we need it. So we've got more people to socialise with, and it's such a fun sport. Why wouldn't you want to be down at your local sailing club, on the weekend?
Well, I mean, that's been a big discussion, and I have an idea. Bar Karate has an idea of how to set up an event that's really easy for the crowd to watch, really easy for people to do, and it'll be a ton of fun. So that's something we're going to talk about a bit more in the next few months. We're going to sort of give that out into the community so people can actually give it a go and see how successful it would be.
Yeah.
Just to go back to your highlight events, not just the Volvo, but for me, the 505 class has been one of my true passions. I absolutely love sailing those boats, and going away to 505 World Championships has just been one of my great, I love doing that. And
what makes them so special? And also, once again, a lot of people wouldn't know what a 505 is. So if you could just briefly describe the boat, but then also I think we'd love to know what's so special about that class.
Yeah, it is a unique class. So it's nearly 60-year-old design, and boats don't age that well, but there's a few iconic things in our world that last forever, that will never age. And one, like if you think of the old Porsche 911, it's an old design, but it's still the most beautiful car going around. And the 50 is, if you don't know those sorts of boats, the 50, the best way to think about it is like a Porsche. It's not overpowered. It's just very highly tuned, super fast, super fun to handle, and it gives great racing. Now, a 50 is 5.05 metres long. It's a two-person dinghy. One person stands on trapeze out on the side of the boat, and the skipper sits on the side and hikes. In a 505, you can control everything. So when you hop into a boat in a 505, you can control the mast rake, the rig tension. You can control the mast ram, so you can control your lower mast bend. You can control your vang. You control your Cunningham eye, your outhaul. The centerboard is jibing, which means as you go upwind, it will flick to one side and drive you further up into the wind. And then you can also rake it or lift it. You can It's got automatic pole launches, still runs symmetrical spinnakers.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how to.
Right? You still got me?
Yeah, just let me. I just got a call. I'm back.
That's right. So you can still run symmetrical spinnakers, and so the class it's very lightweight, very fast, but it's not ridiculously fast where you get huge separation. So tactically, you're still very, very close all the time. So if you make a mistake, you're going to get passed by a heap of boats. So you've got to be on your game. It's a good combination of speed, tactics, and adrenaline. So it's just a good boat. There's plenty of other boats out there that I love as much, but the 50, when I was a little kid, I was sailing along on my dinghy, and my dad was behind me on his trailer sailor, and I was probably 12 or 13 or 14. And I remember I was sailing in front of Dad, racing along at full speed, and this boat just came straight over the top of us, like at full, just made us look slow. I got back to the beach and I said to Dad, "What was that?" And he said, "Oh, that was a 505." And I said, "I'm going to sail those one day, one of those one day." And then there you go. I had a long career sailing them, and now, it's become, we had Harold Cudmore on the week before last, and he just said it's his favourite boat as well. Like it takes a big hole in people's hearts. But there's a lot of great boats coming out. I don't know about you, but the foiling stuff I find incredibly interesting.
That was something I really wanted to talk to you about, because this is something that people are really getting excited about in sailing, and I think it's really going to get the youth back and the young adults back in sailing and make it a more, there's why I've always said to myself, why doesn't sailing have a vibe like surfing or windsurfing or kite surfing, because it's so much fun and it's just as fast and you get just as much of an adrenaline rush and there's great people involved. But it's always been a bit of a closed shop or seen that it's for the rich, and a very wealthy sport, whereas surfing's got more of you can be in your panel van with your surfboard and, live on a few things of 2-minute noodles. But I think foiling is making sailing look more sexy, more fun, more accessible as well, because it doesn't. Yeah. So, what are you thinking about that?
I think that's exactly right. So if you look at what gets onto TV, particularly in Australia, it's the Sydney Hobart, and this Sydney Hobart, fantastic event, love it. But what you see on TV is a lot of people with grey hair, a lot of men. And then when you actually watch the racing, if you're not a sailor, you see them sitting on the side of the boat predominantly. You don't actually understand all the work that's going on and all the effort and the teamwork that's required. So if you're a complete novice, when you look at it, you just don't understand it. It's not a great ad. I think when they bring in the double-handed stuff and they'll see the mixed men and women working together, I think that's going to be really good for our sport. But the foiling is the one that's going to change. And perfect, obviously, the America's Cup, it's going to be fantastic. The amount of conversations we've all had about the last few America's Cups, and now that's rolled into what's become Sail GP, those 50-footers going around.
And that's really fun to watch too. If you haven't watched much sailing, that's a great, because sailing's always had a reputation that it's not fun to watch on TV or from the land. I know a few people have tried to watch it at the Olympics and they're like, well, this is a bit, in Australia at the Olympics going, can't really see much. This is a bit boring. Yeah. So that the GPs, that's really cool. And the new America's Cup stuff, that's great to watch on TV. And of course the Ocean Race.
I think, and then when you look at so you're going to have the Sail GP, which is doing its own TV and it's fully backed. They've got an amazing production crew behind that, and it's growing series. Then you look at the America's Cup with those crazy design boats, and they're super cool, going back to monohulls. And then when you look at the Imoca class, which the Ocean Race, as it's called now, is going to use, and what we're going to see on the Vendée Globe, I'm not sure how many boats are entered for the Ocean Race, but the Vendée Globe, where they're all foiling, and this is a 60-foot boat. it's going to go around the world doing 35 knots. It's just insane. It's insane what we're seeing, and it's so cool to see. People can see it and just fall in love with it. So we did a Bitey, when he was Chief Technical Officer of the race, and Nick Bice, when Volvo owned the race. So the Volvo Ocean Race has been sold to some Swedish businessmen. When Volvo owned the race, he was charged with developing the next boat, because we had the Volvo 65s, which have been so successful. We did one design racing around the world, and it came down to the last jibe of the last day of the race to actually decide the overall. 3 boats were fighting out, and I can tell you what happened there. But so we did this project where I got to be involved in a bit, but the fastest possible boat was what we went for. Right, this is what, and we pulled the designers together, and it came out at basically a 63-foot IMOCA boat. We had foils on the rudder and we had a canting mast in the thing, but it came out, and we were sailing that in the virtual world at 42 knots. So
crazy.
It's crazy, and that's a very accurate virtual tool that is used by one of the America's Cup teams. They let us sail on it. We did about 100,000 hours of sailing on the thing.
Amazing.
And and so we know that the fastest boat, because of the foiling aspect, is around that 63 foot. So we thought, well, let's just drop it into 60 foot, because then we can make it fit into the IMOCA rule. And then that sort of project's fallen over, but the design still exists, and there is a sort of detuned version of that boat has been launched, which is a Pivia, which is the IMOCA 60. It was launched probably 3 or 4 months ago, and there's a really cool photo of it from the other day where it's just completely out of the water and flying, and those things it's just so cool. Such a cool thing. So ocean racing foiling, around the Cairns foiling, it's getting people excited. It's going to make a change. But it's not for everyone though. Foiling's difficult. So but it's like Formula One.
But it's fun to watch. It's like I guess big boats like surfing's probably the hardest thing I've ever learned. I haven't actually tried foiling one yet. Maybe, but it's a great thing to watch. And I think that's what's going to really help with sailing. It's not just watching a Sabre or a Sabo go around the track, and the lasers were okay. The SBs got a lot more exciting, and this is why I think we all love being a part of sailing, is this technology that when we were younger it was changing a bit, and but a lot of us were on boats that have been established for long times, like the 505s, and I grew up on the Herons and Sabres and Cherubs that have been around forever. But now, every week, every time, you have a look on social media at these boats, it's just, they're just getting bigger and better and better and faster. And watching the guys, the America's Cup teams and the new Ocean Race teams, what they're coming out with, and, even on a smaller scale, like the clipper boats and, the more affordable boats, the technology just blows my mind, and that's what's so exciting. We've never seen anything like it, and it's just changing so fast. It's 42 knots. Like that must get close to beating the world sailing record in the pocket. So that's getting super fast.
Yeah. I think the other thing I will say, just whilst we're talking about that, is that the trick to sailing and to being a good sailor is just to go sailing. It doesn't matter what boat you're out there on.
Yeah.
So foiling is expensive, but if you look at all the guys at the top of the tree at the moment in those boats, they all just sailed as kids every day. They all lived. A lot of our top skippers have all come from Lake Macquarie. And so they lived on a lake. Every day after school, they'd push whatever boat they had out and go sailing. And that's what makes it successful. So if you are a young kid, or you're trying to think, don't be embarrassed about what boat you are. Just get out there.
And
That
not even a young kid, for anyone,
anyone
you can pick
get
up a
out there
boat. A lot of people you can get boats for free
because
and
it's still cool.
patch it up and just get
Yep.
out there and have
Yep.
that time on the water. And I think that
Yep.
was actually my next question for you in summary was like, how, what advice would you give to people that are listening to this saying, wow, this is really cool. I'd like to try this sailing stuff. I don't really know what these guys have been talking about, but I love the energy and I've never actually been sailing. How do I try? And that's it. Just go to your local club or find a boat and get out on the water. It doesn't have to be expensive. You don't need to buy heaps of gear. Just you can borrow a life jacket and get a water bottle and off you go.
Yeah. The
And a bucket. A bucket could be handy.
Bailing bucket, yeah. So every yacht club has come and try days. Every yacht club is full of people that will try and help you out. Just ring your local yacht club and ask. Again, sailing does not have to be expensive. I'll make that. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. You can just get a windsurfer and go for a sail. The old Wally windsurfers are back in a big way.
Are they?
Massive. They've just gone nuts. They've redesigned them.
I have to dust off my 10K runner. That might come back.
Yep. Yeah, well, I don't know if the 10K even exists anymore, that brand, but
no.
But the old Wallies have been redesigned, so they double as a SUP, and now they're back racing. They had 116 boats at the Australian Champ, so you can get out on one of those. Everyone can have one of those in the backyard. Takes you 5 minutes to rig. But yeah, or just go and sail on people's boats with them. There's always a need for someone,
People
and just
always need crew. Yeah. Like here in Mallorca, you can go down to. People think it's hard to sail here, but you go down to the Port Andrax where to get people back into sailing at the moment, they're offering people reduced marina fees. So every time you go and join one of their Friday or Wednesday night races, you or maybe they've got some on Sunday too. Anytime you do a race, apparently you knock money off your marina fee. So there was someone I was speaking to that basically had free marina fees because they just did every race. But these people need crew, and you don't need to know what to do. We can teach you as we go. And same here, we've got the Flying 15s up in because I'm based in Mallorca most of the time, up in Port in Alcudia, and they're crying out for people. They want people to use their boats. They'll give you a boat or they'll take you as crew, and they're so friendly and the most unintimidating communities I've ever met. They're so friendly.
Flying 15 is a good boat to learn a lot of things on, actually. It's a good boat for that. I will say, if you are going to take it up, go and do all those things, but do get lessons because you need to hear from normally the people who are instructing are pretty talented. Sometimes you can go on a boat with someone that may not have learnt well, and so you may get some bad lessons. So it's good to get a diverse instruction so you learn from a few people, and then you become much better much more quickly. So I will say that lessons do not hurt in any way whatsoever, or just get the club coach. Every club has a coach just about, and they're normally really helpful people. That's why they're in that role, and normally super talented. It's one of the few sports in the world where the very best pros in the world will be down at their local club and doing coaching. You'll have world champions just standing there in their shorts and t-shirts, and they'll be able to provide any information you want. So it's super cool. Cool sport to be involved with. Yeah.
I've just got one last question, because something that I love about this industry as well is we're very happy, and we all say we're a very lucky group of people. And you are a perfect example of someone that grew up sailing dinghies, did lots of world championships. And you said at the beginning of the interview, just to come full circle, that you kind of luckily fell into this, but you still paved the way. You still took some aligned action to create the position you're in now. So, there's a lot of people that are working on boats. I know a lot of people sometimes leave the super yacht industry because they're not sailing as much as they used to, when they were kids, and they actually want to go and find a land-based job and actually go sailing on Wednesday nights with their mates and on Saturday and do some overnight races and have a bit of fun with it and not do it so much professionally. So what if someone wanted to, and it doesn't have to be sailing related, you're obviously living the life of your dreams. If you could give someone that was like, how do I do what you're doing? How do I find a way to do whatever it is I want? What advice would you give them?
Well, first off, you have to do what you do well. You know, I think that's the truth of it. You can't sort of half something, and then you've got to have the right personality. I think that took a long time for me to develop. I think most of my mates would know that I was sort of very sort of self-assured at a young age without actually having proven myself. And it took a bit of time to sort of learn that. And thanks to my mates for helping me knock that into myself. But I think asking, putting your hand up, making yourself. So we, on the Volvo, I can't remember the guy's name, on the Volvo. So with the Boatyard, we had the Boatyard where we were responsible for maintaining all the fleet for the race. So we'd set up the Boatyard at each stopover, and we had this amazing, talented team that would do all the work on the boats. And so all the boats would turn out exactly identical at the start of each leg. And they go the next leg, and we'd be waiting there for them. When they arrive, everything got done, and they get back on their boats. The pro sailors get back on their boats, and it's all ready to go, and they're all identical. There was this young fella, he was probably 16 or 17, and he came in and he started asking at the Boatyard, and he was a nice kid, you know, he was the right sort of, had the right attitude, nice kid. He had a bit of experience. He'd gone and learnt a few things, and we said, yeah, come in and we'll show you a few things. And then he just kept hanging around, and he would be there till the end of the night, and he'd be moving things and doing the dirty jobs. And, you know, and we started to take a shine to the, who would say, look, you know, I really want to do this as a profession. And so we'd open doors for him. And, you know, I saw him at the Hobart on one of the boats. He was sailing as a pro sailor, you know, he was doing the work, he was doing everything involved. And he'd done that just because he'd been determined. Yep. He knew what he wanted, and he did the hard yards, and, you know, he fit in. So it's very hard to say no to someone. You know, like if we're all super helpful and nice people, you get someone like that, first thing you're going to do is you're going to ring one of your mates and say, oh, I've got this bloke, you know, give him a chance. Yeah. And I think that's how it works, is building that network. And Bicey's probably the perfect example of that, you know, like he was just a young, silly little fella from the country Australia, and, you know, he managed to create that network, and owning that network, doing your job well, and risking it, you know, particularly if you're young, like you haven't got any sort of financial responsibilities. It is a tough gig for a long time though, so you've got to make sure you want it.
Yeah. And purpose and passion are infectious. Passion. You know, when you're really there for the love of it, I think people will, you know, I think we're all in the situations we're in now because someone picked up the phone and gave us what we call a lucky break, but that we got the lucky break because we were so passionate and we kept showing up, you know. And it wasn't when we started sailing, well, when I started sailing professionally, there was no money. It wasn't, you know, you weren't going to make your fortune to buy a house. There was none of that. It was like, you were happy to live for free, you know, as long as you could, you know, get home at the end of the year for Chrissy and the next Hobart. You just wing it, and that's why we all did really well, because we were so passionate. I think it wasn't really about the dollar sign so much.
Yeah, I think like a mental blank, Liz. Mental blank. That's a bit rude. Everyone listening to this will just smack me around the head.
Yeah, we all know Liz anyway. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liz. You know, she's a classic example of someone that's she's just kept pushing and doing, and, you know, she's the most, like, if you're going to hop onto a boat, she's the person you want on the boat as the boat captain, because she can go through every system on the boat, you know. And now she's a classic example of how to do things. And I love seeing the women in our sport. I think that it improves our sport in a huge way. You know, all male or all female crews are wrong. The mixed crews seem to work a lot better. There is a strength issue, but then there's also a maturity thing, you know, like all blokes will go and be too gung-ho. a female brain tends to smarten us all up, I think. So I think that's one of the great things about our sport. Liz Wardley, just seeing someone like her, or any of the women that you see in the Volvo, they're all great fun. Any women that comes into our sport and does it, I think makes our sport better. So I just want to wholeheartedly encourage that behaviour.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we treat everyone as equal, like it's just fantastic fun. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. I better let you wrap it up and because it's very late where you are. So thanks so much for being on our show. It's really great to have you on Yachting International Radio, and I hope we get to chat again. And good luck with Bar Karate. We'll make sure the link for Bar Karate podcast is below this interview, so you can easily click onto that. And make sure you give us any other links of things people might want to follow up with. It's been really interesting, and I'm sure you've inspired loads of people out there to check out sailing as a sport, or check out your podcast, or just go and chase their dreams and get more involved.
Yeah, just have fun. Enjoy
more fun.
Yeah.
Epic.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
It's awesome to meet you. And thanks everyone for listening to Yachting International Radio. And this is Jordan from Bar Karate, and you can check out his podcast on the App Store, I guess, or at the link below.
Yep. Just search Bar Karate in any of your apps, your podcast apps, and she'll come straight up. Three
Give
idiots
us some Bar Karate to say goodbye. How do you do it?
The Bar Karate. Like this.
Epic. Thanks, Jordan. It's been great. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Okay.